viewers, I'm your host Uzma Jafri with another episode of South Asia Focus. Let's begin the show. As India commemorates 75 years of its independence, a new script is being written on the economic front. India recently surpassed the United Kingdom to become the fifth biggest economy. The country's nominal GDP in the first quarter clocked over 854 billion US dollars against the United Kingdom's 816 billion US dollars in the same period. Combined with the Aatmanirbhar Bharat mission, or a resolve for self-reliance, and the Make in India program, India aims to transform itself into a global manufacturing and design export hub. Industrialists across the spectrum predict that by the end of the decade, India will enter the rarefied air of the top 3 economies of the world. South Asia Focus brings you a detailed story on the subject.
As India commemorates 75 years of its independence, a new script is being written on the economic front. A tripartite foundation of a determined political will to take difficult decisions for the greater good, speedy implementation of fiscal objectives, and a science and technology-based development model have propelled India to the coveted top 5 economies of the world. India recently surpassed the United Kingdom to become the 5th biggest economy. The country's nominal GDP in the first quarter clocked over 854 billion USD against the United Kingdom's 816 billion USD in the same period. Among all major economies, India's growth at 3.83% in the 3-year period is the highest, followed by the United States at 3.78%, Canada at 2.58%, the UK at 1.06%, France at 0.68%, and Japan at negative 1.27%. What is even more significant in this achievement is the fact that India reached these numbers at a time when the world was still struggling with the economic fallout of COVID-induced shocks.
The Prime Minister used the challenge of the pandemic as an opportunity of the multiple rounds of economic reforms which covered vast sectors of the economy, which has deeply enhanced the productivity, long-term productivity of the economy.
Industrialists across the spectrum predict that by the end of the decade, India will enter the rarefied air of the top 3 economies of the world. Before we dive deeper into the numbers that led the country to this milestone, let's take a step back and ask some questions. How did India reach here? Was the Indian economic structure resilient enough to absorb COVID-induced shocks? Was the government pro-business, or was it more focused on regulatory compliances? The answer to all 3 questions can be traced to the immediate aftermath of the COVID lockdowns, wherein employment numbers, economic growth, and consumption had halted the world over. While countries around the world, in panic, doled out billions under the guise of stimulus packages to sustain their economies, Indian policy maintained a traditional, conservative approach that ensured that fundamentals of the economy were nurtured, and a welfare net was also in place to assist the poor.
Throughout the pandemic, India was one country where we remained prudent, and we did a number of reforms without going into excessive spending, which could have hurt us.
India relied on increased capex funding so that employment generation and infrastructure development took center stage while inflationary headwinds were countered. The government of India announced a special economic package of 267 billion USD and gave a clarion call to build a self-reliant India. This package was not to be confused as a mere bailout, but instead were supportive measures that created a business ecosystem that had the right incentives to thrive on its own and result in trickle-down benefits to the working population. The major components of the business support package included financial measures for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Instead of providing cash handouts, the additional support was provided in the form of concessional credits to farmers, as well as a credit facility for street vendors. India's incredible pace of immunization proved instrumental in its economic resurgence. After a sharp contraction in the first quarter since the COVID outbreak, and a moderate contraction in the following months, the Indian economy registered a sharp V-shaped growth trajectory. The Production Linked Incentive Scheme, PLI, was launched to develop an incentive-based model to boost domestic manufacturing. Analysts believe that PLI can contribute up to 4% to the GDP annually in terms of incremental revenue. India's PLI scheme has yielded bumper dividends as a large number of industries have shown a massive rise in the scale of their production. India's toy industry is one such example, in which there has been a huge turnaround. It is a shining story of importer to exporter and a bright example of Brand India at work. Digital India led from the front during the COVID distress when India distributed nearly $5 billion USD in cash benefits to the impoverished, direct to their accounts. The country was already on a digital-first trajectory, with one of the highest volumes of digital transactions in the world when the pandemic struck, and further propelled the use of contactless digital technology. India is now clocking around 100 million digital transactions a day, with a volume of 67 billion USD, about a 5-times jump from 2016. A World Economic Forum 2020 report says the use of digital technology led to savings of nearly 23 billion USD, 98% of this by eliminating erroneous beneficiaries. Getting the basics right, India has ensured a strong bedrock of tools that a country needs to make quantum leaps in the economic growth of its people. A business-friendly government is taking decisions to maximize the potential of its workforce and provide companies with the right tools to thrive in this business-friendly ecosystem. India's mixed economy model has defeated all economic templates and has set an example before the world. Owing to leaps taken by the country through this road, economists predict that India will become one of the top 3 economies in the world.
What it is telling you in the broader context, leaving aside the UK, the specific thing, is that India is moving up the power scale. And according to my earlier forecast, by 28 to 30, we will become the 3rd largest country.
Those who have invested in the India story have more to look forward to. The PM Gati Shakti is a master plan for coordinated implementation of infrastructure projects, with around 16 ministries on board to coordinate seamless transportation of goods and other services. The scheme's rapid implementation is moving at the same pace of growth as the country's rapidly accelerating economy. It is also reducing travel time for people across the country. The scheme has over 900 layers of central ministries' data and 654 layers of states' data, which are available at the click of a button. Gone are the days of running pillar to post for clearance from different ministries. Central databases have now made the old style of functioning redundant. In addition to emphasis on building infrastructure projects like highways, bridges, ports, and airports, the government is also giving priority to build special economic zones to provide an internationally competitive and hassle-free environment for exports. GIFT City is a planned business district in Gujarat having multi-service special economic zones. Built on 886 acres, it offers a competitive edge to financial services and technology-related activities. To further accelerate economic growth, the government also launched Startup India, a flagship initiative with the agenda to actively support startups and entrepreneurs. Today, India boasts being the 3rd largest startup ecosystem across the world, with over 100 unicorns and more than 60,000 startups operating within the country. India's position in the Global Innovation Index has improved from 81st in 2015 to 46th in 2022.
इतने कम समय में हम 81 से 46 तक आए हैं, लेकिन यहां रुकना नहीं है, अभी और ऊपर जाना है। आज भारत में रिकॉर्ड संख्या में पेटेंट हो रहे हैं, नए-नए इनोवेशन हो रहे हैं।
Combined with the Aatmanirbhar mission, or a resolve for self-reliance, and the Make in India program, India aims to transform itself into a global manufacturing and design export hub. Consumption, investment, and exports, which represent the 3 key engines of the Indian economy, have all grown strongly at about 26%, 20%, and 15%, respectively, over the last year. The growth in investment of 20% over last year signals that investors are now comfortable to start investing in the Indian economy. Reduction in restrictive compliances, a strong infrastructure foundation, an educated workforce, and one of the largest markets in the world, sends a strong message to investors around the world. India is open for business.
Moving on. While months-long crisis has severely impacted the lives of people belonging to every strata of Sri Lankan society, it has taken an unprecedented toll on those who were living in obscurity owing to their disabilities. Dependent on their families, they are now staring at a dark future as the country struggles to pull itself out of the deep economic crisis.
As the blazing midday sun beats down on his back, Singaram lifts himself over his peanut field, strikes his spade against the earth and begins to dig. The 44-year-old Tamil labourer has been tending to his patch of land for just under 2 months in Mullaitivu, a town on Sri Lanka's northeastern coast that is still recovering from the impact of country's bloody 26-year war. On January 14, 2009, 4 months before the war came to an end, Singaram was wounded by a shell attack and moved to hospital in nearby Puthukuduyeruppu. When an airstrike hit the hospital, Singaram lost both his legs and was wounded in one of his arms. Mullaitivu is located in Sri Lanka's northern province, which is almost entirely populated by Tamils, many of whom were severely affected during the war. It is less than 20 kilometers from Mullaitivu, where an estimated 70,000 to 169,000 Tamils were killed in the war's final offensive. Today, 13 years after the war, the impacted Tamil population is being dealt a second blow by Sri Lanka's economic crisis, the worst it has faced since independence. Runaway inflation has left many of them unable to afford basic necessities, with several people already unable to work.
கஷ்டம்ன்றது கூட இருக்கு எனக்கு மேலே இப்போ கூலிக்காரன் வந்து சில அந்த நாடு எப்பயோ சரி கிழமையில் ஒரு நாள் 2 நாள் அவன் தொழில் செய்வான் எனக்கு அந்த வாய்ப்பு இல்லை சார் இப்போ என்னடா இப்போ எனக்கு வந்து கூலி வேலைக்கு போனாலும் யாரும் எங்களை எடுக்க மாட்டாங்க டக்குன்னு கூலி வேலைக்கு ஏன்டா இப்போ நாங்கள் இப்போ இப்படி போய் செய்கிறதுக்கு சாத்தியம் இல்லை தான் அது இப்போ இது எங்களுக்கு சொந்த விதம் இப்போ நாங்கள் சொந்தமாக ஒரு பொருளை செய்வோம்ன்ட்டு நாங்கள் ஒரு முயற்சி எடுத்து செய்கிறபடியாக இதுக்கு நாங்கள் வந்து பாடுபடுறபடியாக எங்களுக்கு அது செய்துകൊണ്ടിருக்கிறோம்.
Senthipan Kalachelvi has a similar story to tell. The 38-year-old housewife lost an arm and a leg in shell attack while she and her family were displaced from their native village of Kummula Munai in the final months of civil war. The resulting disabilities left Kalachelvi entirely unable to work and confined to carrying out household duties, including sweeping, washing clothes and helping her children with their homework. After being widowed in 2012, she was left totally dependent on her mother, who works as a daily wage labourer.
நாங்கள் இந்த சொந்தரம் கும்பலாமனை அப்படி இடம்பெயர்ந்து நிறைய இடம்பெயர்ந்து கடைசியாக போய் புதுக்குடிப்பு தேவிபுரத்தில் ஆனா பகுதியில் போயிருந்த இடத்தான் எனக்கு அம்மாவுக்கு 2 பேரும் காயப்பட்டுனாங்க. அம்மாவுக்கு விரல் இல்லை, எனக்கு இப்படி கால் கை இல்லை போனது கஷ்டம்னு சொன்னாங்க. கால் கை இருந்து நாங்கள் உழைச்சி எங்கிட்ட சிவியத்தை போக்காட்டு வந்தேன். இந்த சித்தத்தால் இப்படி வந்தது.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees estimated in 2003 that more than 84,000 Tamils fled to neighboring India during the course of the civil war, while 800,000 Tamils were displaced by the conflict. These are not two exclusive cases. There are hundreds in Sri Lanka whose life have been affected massively by the economic crisis that has dawned over the island nation. Months of helplessness has pushed such people to the brink. And with little light appearing at the end of the tunnel, observers fear that food and cash-driven crisis could prompt another tragedy in their lives, and this time around, they might not end up being the fortunate ones.
Time now for Asia This Week, the stories from across the continent.
Vietnamese car maker VinFast began handing its first batch of 100 electric sport utility vehicles over to local customers, with US deliveries of the vehicle due to begin as soon as December. VinFast, which began operations in 2019, is gearing up to expand in the US market, where it hopes to compete with legacy automakers and startups with its two all-electric SUVs, the VF8 and VF9, including battery leasing to reduce the purchase price. VinFast, part of Vin Group, will start shipping cars overseas in November, and customers will have cars delivered to them as soon as December. The company has registered almost 65,000 reservations globally, and it expects to sell 750,000 EVs per year by 2026, starting with the VF8 and VF9 all-electric SUVs. In March, VinFast said it would build a production plant in North Carolina with an initial projected capacity of 150,000 EVs a year. It tapped banks in July to raise at least $4 billion in funding for the project. The VF8 and VF9 vehicles will start at $42,200 and $57,500 respectively for US customers, excluding the cost to lease the electric battery. Bidding funeral to a deceased loved one is the most crucial ritual one has to perform in their lifetime. The after-death rituals have evolved over time due to alterations in social structures and an increase in the number of single-person households. To add to the cause and make funerals memorable, an exhibition was recently organized in Tokyo, where a number of companies offering funeral services and items showcased their products. The changes in social structure and the coronavirus pandemic have made Japanese companies develop services that are more compact and less formal. The Arikata project is a venture jointly produced by the Mintera division and Rokomedo that offers memorable items and products that can be passed on to the next generation by placing a memento of the deceased and a message in a wooden box. The main objective behind the idea is to connect the thoughts and feelings of loved ones for the deceased.
コンパクトにすることが目的ではないんですが、どうやったら自分たちの思いとか自分たちの生きた考えを含めて後世につなげて仲間に含めて伝えることができるかっていうことで、たくさんそういうタッチポイントを思い出してもらえるそのタッチポイントを作ることが目的で、このような形にしています。お墓参りをして、それ以外に本堂やその他ところに置いていただいて、そこで思い出してもらうためのものですね。昔私たちが、小さい頃はアルバムがあって、そのアルバムの写真の脇に親のメッセージが書いてて、その親がどんな思いで、いたのかというのが分かるので、そういうふうな形でその思いを少しずつ貯めていってもらうための仕掛けを作りたいなというふうに思っています。
This is a product for those who, due to recent family circumstance, do not have a Buddhist altar and cannot place a large portrait. By turning the heavy atmosphere of the portrait into art, children can also be exposed to the memory of the deceased. Tova develops products based on the theme of connecting the thoughts of the deceased. The rituals and methods of burying our loved ones might have changed, but the feelings of love and remembrance for the deceased remain the same. Due to the change in societal structure, burial ceremonies have been transformed to meet the needs of modern age while keeping the essence of rituals alive. Gifts have for a long time been an expression of love and admiration. Adding to the art of gifts and making them more customized and special, an exhibition of household goods and gifts was recently held in Tokyo, where manufacturers advertised their products to potential buyers. Tourists and foreign buyers love buying Japanese traditional crafts as gifts and souvenirs. This is a chopstick manufacturer firm in Fukui Prefecture in Japan. These beautiful chopsticks are decorated with traditional crafts with Wakasa Nuri written on them.
若狭塗りと言いますのは卵と貝殻を使った研ぎ出しといいまして、何層にも漆を塗り重ねて研いでそれを現代風にアレンジしているということになっております。インバウンドだけではなくてですね、国内のお客様も含めて買い物ができないような状況ですの やはり早く落ち着いてですね、また普段のように戻っていただいて、私どものお箸を愛していただけたらなというふうに思っています。
The Japanese knife is popular with foreign tourists. The beautiful knife is manufactured by a company in Tsubame Sanjo, Niigata Prefecture, known for its many local factories. The texture of the wood gives a warm impression. This watch is made of wood and has a pattern of wooden rings. The picture on the surface is designed with different colors of wood. Japanese traditional crafts have always been attracting foreign tourists and visitors who are mesmerized by the beauty of Japanese culture and traditions.
Moving on. The Indian state of Odisha has brought to stage some of the most mesmerizing dance and musical festivals that speak volumes of the culture and traditions of the country. Organized in the honor of classical dancer and musician, the Guru Kelucharan Mohapatra, the Kelucharan Mohapatra Award Festival is held every year in Bhubaneswar city of Odisha, where artists present their crafts and are felicitated for their contribution to the cultural scenario of India. We take a look at the event.
The atmosphere of the Rabindra Mandap in Bhubaneswar city of Odisha reverberated with the symphony of melodious classical numbers as a number of artists from all over the country presented their craft on this prestigious platform. This scene was witnessed at the 28th edition of the OMC Guru Kelucharan Mohapatra Award Festival, an event which promotes and honors artists who are contributing to the Indian classical dance and music scenario.
ये जो OMC गुरु केलुचरण महापात्र अवार्ड फेस्टिवल है, उसका ये खासियत है कि हमारे गुरुजी गुरु केलुचरण महापात्र जी सिनेमा, म्यूज़िक, थिएटर, डांस के साथ जुड़े हैं। तो उसी क्षेत्र से जितने भी कलाकार हैं उनको जूरी के माध्यम से चयन करके फिर बाबा के नाम पे, मतलब गुरुजी के नाम पे अवार्ड दिया जाता है उनको हर साल। और ये 28th ईयर है और हर साल बाहर से बहुत सारे कलाकार लोग यहाँ आते हैं ओडिशा में उनका कला का प्रदर्शन करते हैं।
This year's program included a diverse confluence of music, dance and art performances. The inaugural evening witnessed a mesmerizing musical performance by Pandit Ronu Majumdar, who played the flute, and Ustad Tawfiq Qureshi, who was on the djembe. Another notable performance was that of Padma Shri awardee Geeta Chandran and her ensemble Natya Vriksha Dance Collective. The ensemble presented a new version of Bharatnatyam, where traditional moves were performed on Western classical tracks.
भरतनाट्यम की वोकैबुलरी को रखते हुए ऋतु संहार जो कालिदास का है उसका कंटेंट रखते हुए म्यूज़िक, लेकिन हमने वेस्टर्न क्लासिकल म्यूज़िक यूज़ किया चाइकोव्स्की का। तो इसमें हमने बहुत जगह इसकी प्रस्तुति करी है और बहुत लोगों ने सराहा है। तो हमने कहा ऐसे मंच में उसको करने से कैसा रहेगा, हम भी थोड़े से इसमें थे, लेकिन आपने तो देखा किस तरीके से ऑडियंस को ये बहुत अच्छी लगी।
Guru Kelucharan Music and Dance Festival not only is a platform for artists to present their crafts, but also plays a major contribution in spreading awareness about the culture and heritage of Odisha on various national and international platforms.
Gurus hold a significant position in the Indian social hierarchy and value system. With that, we come to the end of this week's episode. See you next week. Goodbye and take care.